It's been all over the news lately. Bitcoin.
Yeah, Bitcoin's been making some pretty big moves.
Exactly. It's been surging in value, and we're going to try to figure out why. And get this, the surge happened right after a major political event, which makes the whole thing even more interesting.
Yeah, you don't see that every day.
Definitely not. So the main source we're looking at today is an article from The Independent called Bitcoin Closes in on $100,000 as Crypto Analysts Made Bold 2025 Prediction. Right off the bat, it says that Bitcoin is on the verge of hitting $100,000 for the first time ever.
Wow, hitting that $100,000 mark would be a huge milestone. I think it'll show that more and more people are starting to have faith in Bitcoin. Like we could be seeing it shift from this niche investment to something much bigger, more like a widely accepted asset, almost like stocks or bonds.
Okay, so that's pretty major in itself. But here's where things get really interesting. This surge, the one we're talking about, happened right after Donald Trump won the U.S. presidential election.
Oh, wow. So right after the
Yeah.
election.
The article actually points out that Bitcoin's value has been steadily climbing for 2 weeks straight, ever since those election results came in.
That's pretty interesting timing.
It really is. Makes you think, right? Now, during his campaign, Trump talked a lot about cryptocurrency, and he promised to introduce regulations and policies that would be favorable to Bitcoin. I mean, it seems like investors are putting their money where their mouth is and betting that he's actually going to follow through on those promises.
Yeah, that makes sense. People are always looking for signs, trying to read the tea leaves and figure out what's going to happen next. So when someone like Trump, who now has a lot of power, starts talking about being pro-crypto, people are going to pay attention.
For sure. And it's not just Trump himself. There are some big names in his inner circle, people like Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, who are known to be very pro-crypto. So do you think their influence could actually speed things up even more?
Hmm. Well, it's hard to say for sure, but they could definitely become some pretty powerful advocates for the crypto industry, especially now that Trump's back in office.
Yeah.
This actually raises a bigger question for me. Could Trump's second term maybe even legitimize cryptocurrency in a way that we haven't really seen before?
That's a great question. And speaking of legitimizing, the article actually quotes Nigel Green, who's the CEO of DeVere Group. He predicts that Bitcoin could hit $120,000 by early 2025.
Whoa, $120,000. That's a pretty bold statement.
It is. And it leads us to another really interesting point that the article brings up. Bitcoin is starting to be seen as this modern-day safe haven, kind of like how gold has been for centuries.
Yeah, like digital gold.
Exactly. Digital gold. People are turning to it to protect their wealth, especially when the economy feels uncertain. It's like when traditional markets are going crazy, people start looking for alternatives. And for many, Bitcoin seems to fit the bill.
Makes sense. It's like if you don't trust the dollar or the euro or whatever, you start looking for something else that you think will hold its value. And for a lot of people, that something else is Bitcoin.
But what else is driving this whole digital gold narrative? I mean, is it just fear of inflation, or is there something more to it?
It's definitely more than just inflation, though that's a big part of it. We also can't ignore the fact that more and more institutional investors are getting involved in Bitcoin.
You mean like the big players, like hedge funds and those kinds of institutions?
Exactly, those big institutions. Remember a while back we talked about those spot Bitcoin ETFs? Well, they got approved recently, and that's made it way easier for these big investors to get in on the action. And when you have all that money flowing into Bitcoin, well, that's going to drive the price up. It also makes the whole space seem more legitimate.
So is that what we're looking at then? A future where Bitcoin is as normal as owning, say, stocks or bonds?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The outlook for Bitcoin is definitely looking positive right now, but the article does say that it won't be all smooth sailing. There's always going to be volatility in this market.
Oh, for sure. I mean, remember back in 2021, Bitcoin's price went on a wild ride. It peaked at $68,000 and then crashed down to below $20,000. Anyone who invested back then was probably feeling pretty dizzy. Does the article say anything about whether we're in for a repeat performance?
It does mention the possibility of volatility, but it also suggests that this time around things might be different. The article argues that if Trump's policies are as effective as some people are predicting, the whole crypto market could avoid another big crash and become more stable by 2025.
Okay, hold on a sec. What would make this time different? What kind of stability are we even talking about?
Well, one of the key differences this time is that we're seeing a shift in how the whole market works, like the underlying dynamics. You see, if those pro-crypto policies actually come through, it could change how people see Bitcoin and how it's regulated.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to get it. I can see how that could lead to a pretty big shift.
Right. But it's important to remember that not everyone's on board with this whole Bitcoin thing. There are still plenty of people who think this is just another bubble that's going to burst. And, they might have a point. We've seen these cycles before.
Yeah, true. We need to stay grounded and consider all sides of the story. What are some of the other concerns people have about Bitcoin's future?
Well, one big one is the whole regulatory landscape. Even if Trump's administration does put in place some crypto-friendly policies, there's still a lot of uncertainty about how governments around the world are going to handle cryptocurrency. And then there's the environmental impact of Bitcoin mining, which is a huge issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, those are some excellent points. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows for Bitcoin, even with this recent surge. What should our listener keep in mind as they're trying to navigate this whole complex landscape?
The bottom line is that investing in cryptocurrency, any cryptocurrency, comes with risks. It's a volatile market, and there's always a chance of losing money. Before you even think about putting money in, you got to do your research, understand the technology, and be aware of the potential downsides.
Absolutely. It's not about getting rich quick. It's about making smart decisions and really understanding what you're getting into. Speaking of making smart decisions, the article highlights a pretty bold prediction.
You talking about Fiorenzo Manganiello, the founder of Lion Group.
That's the one. He actually says that Trump's influence could put an end to Bitcoin's boom and bust cycles.
Wow, that's a pretty radical idea.
It is, but I guess it just shows how much optimism there is around the potential impact of Trump's policies. Whether he's right or wrong, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how things play out.
No doubt about it.
So to recap, we've got this surge in Bitcoin's value, maybe because of Trump's policies, and we've got all these predictions flying around, from cautious optimism to some pretty radical transformations. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's time we dive a little deeper into this whole digital gold idea. We touched on it earlier, but it's worth exploring what's driving this perception and what it could mean for Bitcoin in the long run.
Let's do it. I'm really curious to hear more about this digital gold thing. What are the things that are making people compare Bitcoin to gold, and what does that comparison even mean? This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's kind of wild when you think about it. You have gold, this ancient precious metal that's been a store of value for centuries, and then you have Bitcoin, this super modern digital asset, kind of challenging that whole idea.
Yeah, it's like a clash of the titans or something. But what's
Yeah.
actually driving this whole digital gold narrative?
Well, I think a big part of it is scarcity. Just like gold, Bitcoin has a limited supply. Like there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins.
Yeah.
And that built-in scarcity, well, it creates the sense of value, much like a rare diamond or a limited edition piece of art.
That makes sense. When something's rare, it's naturally going to be more valuable. But is scarcity the only thing that's linking Bitcoin to gold?
Oh no, not at all. Another big factor is this idea that Bitcoin can act as a hedge against inflation. See, when governments print more money, the value of traditional currencies can go down. That's inflation. But Bitcoin, with its fixed supply, is seen by a lot of people as a way to protect their purchasing power when inflation hits. Just like people have historically turned to gold in times of economic turmoil, some are now turning to Bitcoin for the same reason.
So you're saying that Bitcoin is like a digital life raft in a sea of economic uncertainty.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And there's another aspect to this digital gold thing that we haven't even touched on yet. Decentralization. Unlike regular currencies that are controlled by governments and central banks, Bitcoin operates on a decentralized network. No single entity has control over it.
Okay, so that's a huge difference. So theoretically, Bitcoin could be immune to the whims of governments and financial institutions, right? That's a powerful idea.
It's definitely a big draw for people who are wary of centralized authority. And then you have the whole technology aspect of Bitcoin. It's built on blockchain, this revolutionary technology that's essentially a secure, transparent digital ledger. This tech adds another layer of trust and confidence to Bitcoin because every transaction is recorded permanently on the blockchain. Basically impossible to tamper with or counterfeit.
Okay, this digital gold narrative is really starting to make sense to me now.
Yeah.
But how does all of this affect you, the listener? What does this mean for everyday life?
Here's something to think about. Imagine a world where using Bitcoin is as normal as using a credit card. You could buy your groceries, pay all your bills, even book a flight using Bitcoin. This is what a lot of Bitcoin supporters envision for the future, a future where it's a truly mainstream currency.
That's a huge shift from where we are now. But is it even realistic? Are we really on the verge of a Bitcoin revolution?
Well, it's not going to happen overnight, that's for sure. There are still some big hurdles that Bitcoin has to overcome, like scalability and those regular. The world of crypto is moving so fast. It's not crazy to think that we could see massive changes in the next few years that could lead to much wider adoption.
So you're basically saying that we should keep an open mind and just see what happens.
Exactly. Cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, is constantly changing, and it's exciting to be a part of this, even just as an observer.
No, I'm with you on that.
Hmm.
But before we get too caught up in all the what-ifs of the future, let's come back down to earth for a second. Remember, Bitcoin is still super volatile. We've seen its price swing wildly before, and there's no guarantee that this recent surge will last forever.
Totally agree. It's crucial to remember that. Investing in Bitcoin is not for the risk averse. You gotta be cautious, do your research, and know what risks you're taking on.
You can't just jump in blindly hoping to get rich quick. It's about making informed choices.
Hmm.
So what are some of the big takeaways our listener should remember from this deep dive into Bitcoin?
I think the most important thing to remember is that Bitcoin is a groundbreaking technology, and it has the potential to really shake up the traditional financial systems. Believer or skeptic, it's a force to be reckoned with, and we're only just starting to see how it's going to impact the global economy.
Yeah, it's definitely not something to ignore.
No way. And another key takeaway is that the whole digital gold narrative is gaining traction for a reason. Bitcoin's scarcity, its potential as a hedge against inflation, and its decentralized nature are all contributing to that idea.
It's an interesting comparison, that's for sure. And it makes you think about the future of money in a whole new way.
Absolutely. And lastly, always keep in mind that Bitcoin is still a relatively new asset and it's volatile. Approach it with caution, do your research, and be ready for anything to happen.
So what's next for Bitcoin? What do you think? Where's it all headed?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I'd be a rich man. The future of Bitcoin is uncertain, just like the future of any disruptive technology. But one thing's for sure, this story's still being written.
And we'll be right here to break down each new chapter as it comes out.
Absolutely. We'll keep diving deep into the crypto world and keep you updated on all the latest developments.
So to everyone listening, keep those questions coming and keep your minds open.
Because the world of Bitcoin is constantly changing and we're all in this together trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it really is amazing, Who would have thought that something like cryptocurrency, something that seems so abstract, could actually change the whole global financial system? It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? We've only just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to Bitcoin that we could talk about.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah.
Like what? Give us a little preview of what other rabbit holes we could go down.
Well, for one, we could take a closer look at the whole environmental impact of Bitcoin mining. That's a big concern for a lot of people, and it's a really complex issue with no easy answers. Or we could talk about the rise of all these other cryptocurrencies, what people call altcoins. There's a whole world of digital assets out there, each with their own unique features and potential.
Ooh, stop. You're tempting me. I'm already feeling that urge to learn everything about all of them. But before we get totally lost in the cryptoverse, let's wrap things up for today with a final thought for our listeners to chew on.
Okay, here's one. We've talked a lot about how Bitcoin could potentially disrupt the status quo, but what if it actually does? What if Bitcoin, or maybe some other cryptocurrency, becomes so widely accepted that it actually challenges traditional currencies?
Whoa, that's a big what if. What would that world even look like?
That's the question, isn't it? Would it be like this utopia of financial freedom, or would it create a whole new set of problems and inequalities? How would governments react? And what would it mean for our daily lives?
Man, those are some heavy questions. So
Yeah.
you're basically asking, what if everything we thought we knew about money was suddenly flipped on its head?
Exactly. And the truth is, nobody knows what the future holds. But by thinking about these questions, by really wrestling with these ideas, we can start to imagine the possibilities and get ready for whatever's coming next.
So to all of you listening out there, we're giving you a challenge. Don't just take our word for it. Go out there, do your own research, stay curious, and keep exploring. The world of crypto is always changing. Who knows? Maybe you'll discover the next big thing.
And hey, maybe you'll even be part of shaping the